If Godzilla 2014 was America's answer to the 1954 film, then Godzilla King of the Monsters is America's answer to every bonkers Showa-era film that came after. With all the monster brawls, tag team action, and irrelevant sci-fi human nonsense you could ask for. And are you ready for my hot take, Internet? I think it's better than Godzilla 2014. Godzilla King of the Monsters is directed by Michael Dougherty and is the sequel to the 2014 Godzilla film. It stars Kyle Chandler, Millie Bobby Brown, Vera Farmiga, and a cast of Toho's biggest stars including Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. 5 years after the events of the first film, Godzilla is forced out of retirement yet again when a terrorist organization begins waking up dormant titans around the globe. And this quickly goes awry when they awaken Ghidorah, a rival alpha titan to Godzilla, and the clash between the monsters ends up turning into a worldwide battle with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. So a few things I want to address before we get started. 1. It needs to be stated that Godzilla King of the Monsters writing is just not good. In fact, it's downright cringeworthy most of the time. 2. I do not care about fact number 1, the positives far outweigh the negatives for me. 3. Had I been given the amount of money Michael Dougherty was given to make a Godzilla film, I cannot honestly say that my version would be any different than this. Godzilla King of the Monsters is a film that I consider woefully underappreciated. It didn't do well at the box office, critics panned it citing too much monsters, not enough human drama, and this is where I become a stickler about critics and the way they critique movies. Because proper critique requires contextualization. When I talk about movies on this channel and I say something like Color Out of Space is a must-see, I'm talking from the perspective of genre film specifically. It would be intellectually dishonest of me to critique a film like Color Out of Space in comparison to a film like The Godfather. So I gotta then ask, isn't it also intellectually dishonest to complain about something like lack of character development or lack of well-rounded human characters in a Godzilla film, which notoriously have never had either of those things, or at least rarely had them? The idea of complaining about Godzilla 2014 because there was not enough monster action, and then complaining about King of the Monsters because there's too much monster action, is frankly stupid. Godzilla King of the Monsters is not a perfect film, not by a long shot, but it is a damn good Godzilla film. And that makes sense considering Michael Dougherty is basically as diehard a Godzilla fan as I am. Legendary handed the reins of one of the biggest franchises of all time to one of the biggest fans of that franchise. Dougherty got to basically live every Godzilla fan's dream in making this movie. This is a fan service film at its core, and I'm okay with that. Easter eggs galore, tons of throwbacks to the original franchise for better and for worse, more monster fights, more monsters, and some of the most insane balls-to-the-wall kaiju action you can handle. I'd much rather just get the negatives out of the way first so I can geek out about the positives. King of the Monsters has a diverse cast of characters, which is to say, it has a lot of characters. Are any of them well written? Not really. Even ignoring the cringeworthy dialogue and action movie one-liners spit out by 90% of the supporting cast.
This is Godzilla's world. We just live in it.
Damn right.
My God. Zilla.
The Russell family, Mark, Emma, and Madison, are the leading characters of this film, and Madison is fine. Millie Bobby Brown does whatever she can with what she's given, and thankfully she's not given much dialogue in this movie. Emma is basically just an eco-fascist in the wake of their son's death, and post-villain reveal, her plan is just to Thanos the planet, but with giant monsters instead of Infinity Stones. Do I need to go into why that plan is dumb? Mark is just the worst character in this movie. Hands down, the worst. I seriously hate the guy. Nothing against Kyle Chandler, I think he's a fine actor. I loved him in Peter Jackson's King Kong. But Mark is just a legitimately awfully written character. He is the definition of a Mary Sue. Mark is literally just a wildlife photographer. And yet, in spite of that, he somehow knows better than all the scientists and all the military, and he always ends up being right. And everyone's like, hey, thanks, good idea, Mark. Which is exactly what the term Mary Sue was coined to mean before a bunch of sad, butthurt men on the internet turned it into any woman who does anything in a film. Charles Dance is also here too, playing the leader of the terrorists, Alan Jonah, or Jonah Allen. The movie's never really clear which one is his first name. It doesn't really matter. He doesn't have much to do outside of spit out a couple one-liners and carry himself with the swagger of Tywin Lannister, except he's talking about kaiju instead of talking about dragons.
Long live the king.
All that is to say, the characters are bad, the plot is nonsensical, and any joke that isn't related to a character getting absolutely demolished by a kaiju aren't funny.
Ghidorah, the one who's many.
What did you say, gonorrhea? Huh?
Ghidorah!
Okay, honestly, who the fuck wrote that line? Who put that in this movie? Who decided that this was going to stay in the movie? How on earth did that make it into the final cut? The joke isn't even funny. The two words don't sound remotely the same, so it doesn't even make sense. What, because they both start with G and end in Was that line really deemed so funny that it was necessary to keep it in the film? I digress, onto the good. Aside from just being a Godzilla film that celebrates the best of the franchise, there are three main reasons that I freaking love this movie. Score, cinematography, spectacle. Those three things in this film are enough to make me not care about the ways that Godzilla 2014 edges this out technically, and declare this my favorite film in the Monsterverse. This is a beautiful film, it's seriously gorgeous. This was highlighted from the first trailer. The cinematography is stunning. There are at least a dozen shots from this film that I would frame if I could. Doherty utilizes a lot of vibrant colors and wide shots to emphasize the beauty, the majesty, and the massive size of these creatures. But he also doesn't forget the franchise roots, utilizing a ton of really cheesy digital zooms that are really funny if you notice them. I'll even accept a bit of heavy-handed religious symbolism because A, that shot is gorgeous, and B, it is not nearly as heavy-handed or constant as any Zack Snyder film. Sorry you clowns are jealous of the fact that Adam Wingard knows what colors are past gray and brown. Bear McCreary's score is one of the franchise's absolute best, delivering new, bombastic themes for Ghidorah and Rodan, while returning to classic Ifukube themes for Godzilla and Mothra. His takes on these classic themes are incredible. His takes on these themes are beautiful and powerful, and something that will give any true fan of the franchise chills hearing them. He utilizes a lot of chanting in this album, something that lends to the raw power and scale of the fights, while emphasizing the fact that these creatures are basically gods. And then there's just the spectacle of this film. There's the sheer beauty and divinity of Mothra emerging from her chrysalis, the majesty of Godzilla rising fully recharged, set to a beefed-up version of his classic Ifukube theme, Ghidorah's awakening, his alpha call to awaken all the titans, Mothra's god rays, the high-octane Rodan chase scene, or the entirety of the final battle in Boston. This film is full of jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring moments that'll give fans and casuals plenty to cheer at. All these classic Toho characters that I grew up in being reimagined in glorious big-budget CGI, it's just the coolest thing in recent memory for me. They're all so expressive. There's so much character to each of these monsters. Not only does Ghidorah look downright demonic, but all three of his heads have their own distinct personalities, acting as a hive mind while each being their own consciousness. They all bicker amongst themselves. They bully the left head, who's affectionately now known as Kevin, because he's a little dumb. And they'll all take on different roles in a fight while still ultimately acting simultaneously toward the same goal. There's also another particularly great moment showcasing these monsters' personality during the dogfight with Rodan. There's this point where the jets peel off from him and he stops and smirks almost, before completely bulldozing through the rest of the squadron and taking them all out. It's brief but expressive moments like that that showcase just how intelligent these creatures actually are. There's one person in the human element that I do want to discuss, and once again, that person is Ken Watanabe as Dr. Zawa. Zawa plays a much more important role in this film compared to G2014, regardless of how diminished his part may be from the original. And in a beautiful bit of poetry, as George Lucas would call it, this Zawa sacrifices himself in a similar fashion to the original Dr. Zawa, but for the opposite reason. Where the original Dr. Zawa ended his own life to kill Godzilla and prevent his plans for the Oxygen Destroyer from ever falling into the wrong hands, this Zawa sacrifices himself selflessly in an act to revive the Monster King, killing his demons in the process and using a nuclear warhead for good, all in the belief that Godzilla is the key toward mankind and Titans coexisting in peace. It's a beautiful scene that's genuinely moving, and we get to watch Zawa's faith in Godzilla not go unrewarded, as his final moments are spent witnessing something that no living person has witnessed, and interacting with an ancient creature that he's spent the better part of his life researching. Are there things the movie could have done better? Absolutely. Mothra is definitely a bit shafted here. Her screen time is severely limited compared to the other three big names, but that's not to say she doesn't get her fair share of awesome moments. I just wish that we got to see her do more earlier in the film, because as it stands, we don't even see her in her final form until the climax. I also think that the Oxygen Destroyer being included in this movie at all is a fundamental misunderstanding of its importance. For such a majorly important part of the 1954 film, the Oxygen Destroyer is just kind of shoehorned in here in a throwaway line that's like, hey, we made this. It's a devastatingly powerful weapon with harrowing consequences, and it's very representative of an atomic bomb. And here, it's reduced to
a prototype for a new weapon, an oxygen destroyer, designed to exterminate all life forms within a 2-mile radius.
But truly, all of that pales in comparison to the amount of love and care that was put into this movie by a fan. There are so many Easter eggs in this film. Doherty uses some of the classic roars from Godzilla and Ghidorah and mixes them in with their new sound effects. We get a fun little throwback to the Mothra fairies through Dr. Chen and Dr. Ling, who we eventually realize are twins. And it's suggested that they have some sort of connection with Mothra that's never fully elaborated on, but there's something. On top of that, if you had told me back when G2014 came out that this franchise would go full dong and actually make King Ghidorah an alien, that we'd get an actual divine moth goddess version of Mothra who can infuse her soul into Godzilla and resurrect herself, that we'd get an Anguirus skeleton in an underwater city and freaking burning Godzilla, I would not have believed you about any of this. Doherty did it, and it's awesome. All that is to say, this movie slaps. Seeing monsters I've been in love with since I was 3 years old on the big screen in 2019 with big budget CGI was honestly worthy of tears for me sitting in the theater. I absolutely adored it, and if you're like me, you don't care about the human bullshit. You're here to see big boys hitting other big boys. King of the Monsters provides that in spades. It's cheesy and fun and so freaking awesome. And in a Godzilla film, what more are you looking for? As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel, click down there, like, comment, subscribe. There's a Patreon link and a Kickstarter link in the description for my new short film, Diviner. If you want to help us fund that, please consider donating. I would really appreciate it. You could be like any of these cool people right here if you want to subscribe to my Patreon. I'd appreciate that too. Even $1 would help. We do all sorts of cool new things like movie nights once a month. If any of that interests you, please consider donating. I would really appreciate it, but even if you don't, thank you so much for watching anyway, and I will see you all very soon.